Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're putting on our political science and sociology hats to dissect the complex and honestly often hidden machinery of American public opinion. We're going to explore a genuinely fascinating ecosystem, one where the human mind, the modern media landscape, and massive financial institutions all crash into each other. By the time we wrap up, I promise you're going to see the political world around you in a completely different light.
But look, before we get into the heavy institutional mechanics of it all, I want to start with a deeply personal, almost Socratic question. How do you know what you actually believe? It feels like an easy question, right? But really think about it for a second. Are your political thoughts truly self-determined, meticulously reasoned out by you and you alone? Or are they the end product of systemic power, shaped by forces you barely even notice?
Okay, let's dive into this. Think of this as our syllabus for decoding the political ecosystem. We'll start with shaping the public mind, then look at media influence and theories, move into manufacturing the narrative, examine the pluralism illusion, and finally, tackle money in modern elections.
Starting right off with Section 1, shaping the public mind and the actual roots of public opinion. Now, political scientists use incredibly rigorous scientific mechanics and polling to measure public opinion. But the origin of those opinions, that is actually quite messy. As this concept of political socialization highlights, our baseline beliefs absolutely do not just appear out of nowhere. We are heavily socialized by our immediate surroundings. Long before you ever watch a political debate or read a news blog, your worldview is being quietly calibrated by the family you grow up in, the friends you hang out with, and the authority figures you respect.
And because our environments are so vastly different, public opinion is inherently fractured right out of the gate. These demographic factors, your class, your race, the gender gap, your age, your religion, they fundamentally divide American political opinions before the media even gets involved. It's a beautifully messy, incredibly diverse reality that makes public opinion anything but uniform.
Which brings us to Section 2, Media Influence and Theories. How does the message actually get delivered to these socialized minds?
Well, early on, researchers bought into the magic bullet theory. That was the idea that the media acts kind of like a hypodermic needle, injecting these irresistible propagandistic messages directly into completely passive brains. But modern sociology points toward uses and gratifications. This theory suggests we aren't passive at all. Actually, consuming media is a lot like standing in a pharmacy aisle. You actively look for the specific, brightly colored box of medicine that makes you feel nice, fulfills your personal goals, or most importantly, just validates what you already believe.
And this dynamic brilliantly illustrates what happens when the media landscape shifts from traditional gatekeepers to specialized news enclaves. Audiences naturally gravitate toward their preferred digital and cable echo chambers. Just like the proverbial monkeys covering their eyes and ears to anything outside their bubble, we actively choose the exact network, whether that's Fox News, MSNBC, or CNN, that provides the gratification and validation our socialized minds are actively seeking.
But wait, there's another incredibly important dynamic at play here, the two-step flow theory. This essentially introduces a middleman. Very often, we don't actually consume raw media ourselves. Instead, a media message goes to an opinion leader. That might be a highly followed internet influencer or, honestly, just that one coworker who always seems to know about politics. They digest it, refine it, and pass it on to the broader masses. We rely entirely on them to interpret the world for us.
Let's transition to Section 3, Manufacturing the Narrative, and how thought is actively shaped.
So, once you understand that audiences actively seek validation and rely heavily on opinion leaders, you start to see how politicians and media organizations actively manipulate this exact ecosystem to shape what we think. And they do it through three highly structured, mechanical steps. First up is agenda setting, using their massive platforms to dictate what issues we should even be thinking about in the first place. Second is priming, preparing the public to view those issues from a certain angle. And third is framing, carefully presenting events so that the public interprets the news in a very specific, desired way.
Want to see just how incredibly powerful these mechanisms are? Consider this historical anecdote. In August of 1990, the PR firm Hill & Knowlton was paid $11 million by a group to literally plant a story in the US media about Saddam Hussein's forces pulling babies from incubators in Kuwait. This is a literal textbook example of deliberate PR manipulation. By planting this news, they successfully primed and framed American public opinion to support going to war.
But of course, this ecosystem is constantly evolving. Back in the 19th century, the press was directly controlled by political parties. Following Vietnam and Watergate, we saw the rise of adversarial journalism, the media finally acting as a watchdog. Then, the 1996 Telecommunications Act completely changed the game, leading to massive corporate consolidation where a few megacorporations own the vast majority of outlets. Today, the digital age complicates this control even further. The internet allows political figures to bypass gatekeepers entirely, manipulating narratives through deliberate trolling and creating belief echoes, these false frames that linger in the public consciousness long after they've been fact-checked by the grassroots.
Let's zoom out to the macro level for Section 4, the pluralism illusion, looking at interest groups and power.
James Madison, one of the founding fathers, envisioned this really ideal system called pluralism. The theory is beautiful, honestly. All interest in society should be free to compete for influence. By having a massive diversity of interest groups fighting it out, no single group can dominate, which naturally results in balance, moderation, and compromise.
Now, what's really interesting here is how these interest groups actually get individuals to join in the first place. To build their armies and overcome the free rider problem, where people want the policy without doing any of the work, they offer specific selective benefits. They give you informational training, material discounts like travel packages, solidarity through networking, or purposive representation, just to incentivize you to join and add to their collective power.
But here is exactly where Madison's ideal hits a brick wall. Interest group membership heavily skews toward higher income brackets. Those making over $125,000 a year are vastly more likely to be involved than those making under $15,000. This stark reality reveals that pluralism is flawed. In practice, this system overrepresents the wealthy and the highly educated while totally marginalizing poorer voices who simply lack the resources to organize and lobby.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 5, the fire hose of money in modern elections.
The nature of elections has undergone a massive systemic shift. Back in the 19th century, campaigns were incredibly labor-intensive. You won by mobilizing literal armies of workers, pure grassroots people power. Today, in the 20th and 21st centuries, campaigns are entirely high-tech and intensely capital-driven. You don't just need people anymore. You need absolute fortunes to buy television slots, polling data, and digital air power.
To put that into perspective, look at the trajectory here. Political Action Committee, or PAC, and Super PAC spending went from about $78 million in the late 70s to nearly $1 billion by the early 2000s, and it has only skyrocketed since then. This isn't just funding. It is a literal fire hose of money pouring into the media ecosystem, totally drowning out individual, everyday voices in favor of organized, elite capital.
The reality of campaign finance today is just staggering. Senate candidates must raise millions just to compete, and presidential candidates now easily raise hundreds of millions. Attempts to fix this, like the 2002 Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, tried to reduce unregulated soft money. But as we know, money always finds a way. This reform inadvertently created a massive loophole, leading to the rapid rise of independent 527 committees. The ultimate result? Incredibly wealthy individuals can now bypass traditional limits, acting as an elite interest group that amplifies wealthy voices and dramatically deepens political inequality.
So, this brings us completely full circle to the question we started with. If massive amounts of elite money buy the media airtime, and that media actively sets the agenda, primes your views, and frames the narrative to cater to your specific, socialized demographic, are your political beliefs truly your own? It's a provocative thought, I know, but understanding this complex ecosystem finally gives you the agency to step back and analyze the forces trying to shape you. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning everything.